The first thing that you're going to need is a passport from your home country. It has to be current, and on top of that, it has to still be valid for at a minimum of 6 months from the time that you land in India. So if you do have a passport, make sure to check the expiry date, and if it says that it's going to expire, it looks like 3 months before you land in India, then you need to update your passport. You will need a visa to travel to India. We chose to get an e-visa. You can go online to get an e-visa. It's extremely fast, at least for us. It took, I would say, less than 24 hours for it to be approved. And there's some wording on that site that kind of threw me off. For example, one question was, what is your country ID? And I had no idea what that meant. And then I looked it up, and they meant your social insurance number. We went on to indianvisaonline.gov.in. I would recommend that anybody go there. It was quick. We were charged $50 Canadian for the e-visa application process, but you should make sure to check that out for yourself because they might change the price as the years go by. If that price depends on which country of origin you're applying from, so if you're from a different country, there might be a different fee, so make sure to check into that. But I would recommend that anybody just go on to that website. It's legitimate. There are many sites out there that say that they will take your information and send it off for you. I guess they're trying to say they'll simplify the process, but they charge a fee as well, and in my opinion, there's no need of doing that. It's really easy. You do need a few basic computer skills, like how to take your own photo. And our photo had to be in front of a plain background, so that was fine. We just stood in front of one of our doors. It was a white door. But we had to format the picture properly, so it was the proper pixels. So that is something to consider if you don't have any computer skills at all. Maybe you want to take the help of somebody that you know who does, just so that it's a little less stressful for you. But those few small things aside, I would highly recommend anybody just go online, get an e-visa. Also get a medical e-visa. That, I think, requires a letter from a hospital, and it's for a longer length of time. So that's something to consider as well if you would like to look into that. I think, though, with a medical e-visa that it would take longer to process. With a tourist e-visa, and that's what we got, we are allowed to stay in the country for 60 days at a time. And so we were able to stay for 60 days, which was more than enough for what we needed. And then you're able to leave the country and then come back at some other point in time. I think it's up to 2 or 3 times. I'm not quite sure about that, so look into that for yourself. But if you need to leave India and then for whatever reason come back, you're able to do that either 2 or 3 times without having to reapply for a new tourist e-visa. A friend of mine gave me an amazing tip. She said, when your e-visa is approved, then you will get an email saying that it's been approved. And she made a mistake where she printed off the confirmation email and tried to get on a plane, but that wasn't the actual document. So when your e-visa is approved, you'll get a confirmation email, and then it's up to you to read through the email, follow the link. It will take you back to the website where you applied for the e-visa, and then you're able to actually see the e-visa document and print that off. I would recommend that you print off multiple copies. Well, one reason for me, I was worried about losing one of our e-visas, and then I didn't want to have a kerfuffle with that. But also with my doctor, he required that I give him my medical documents, and that was fine, of course, and also a copy of my e-visa. So I had a few copies of my e-visa, and I was able to just give him one, and that was no problem. Of course, you'll need a plane ticket. You can get plane tickets pretty much anywhere, but I would recommend that anybody go to any of those discount websites like kayak.com or expedia.ca, any of those travel sites, because I found that was where I was getting the best ticket price. Of course, you're going to need time off of work. Luckily for me, I was able to get my time off of work, but I was also able to have a little bit of wiggle room. I found out that I made a mistake in how much time I felt like I needed, and so it was nothing for me to email the people at work and say I need to take another week, and then I was able to have that. But you might want to consider that as well when you're planning. Do you want to ask for more time off of work than necessary? Just in case you get here and the doctor finds that you need to stay longer than they had originally thought. Are you able to ask for time off of work that's a little bit longer than necessary, but if you're able to come home sooner, can you go to work sooner? So you might want to think about that. I would recommend that nobody kind of make the journey and say, okay, the doctor said 6 weeks and that's all it's going to take, because with medicine, nothing is guaranteed. Maybe your body heals faster, maybe your body heals slower. You don't, or at least I would not, want to be in the position where I only have 7 weeks and then I absolutely have to get home. And for whatever reason, things took longer than anticipated and your fistula is not completely healed or something along those lines. I'm just throwing this out there. And then you're stuck in the uncomfortable position of having to go home without your fistula fully healed. And then do you have to come all the way back to India again to get that little bit fixed? So if I were you, I would consider it. You'll need to have your place that you are choosing to stay lined up, of course. You might want to consider what if you do have to stay for a little bit longer than anticipated, whether or not you'll still be able to stay in the hotel or in the apartment. As I said, I kind of messed up on when I thought we were going to leave, and I was short by about 5 days. Luckily, I was just able to go to the front desk and say we have to extend our stay by 5 days, and that was fine, because otherwise, I'm sure we could have found a different hotel somewhere else. But could you imagine being over here and you need to stay longer than you thought, and for whatever reason, the place you're choosing to stay can't accommodate you, or the person, if you're renting an apartment, needs to have you out by a certain day and you're just stuck? So you might want to consider just having that wiggle room with where you're staying. Childcare would be a consideration for people who have children, as well as pet care for people who have pets. And is there any wiggle room there? We were very fortunate in that my husband's parents house sat and also cat sat our cat for a good chunk of the time we were here, but there did come a time when they weren't able to stay any longer. And so luckily we have a local pet sitter that we always use, and it was very easy for them to just contact that person, and then they just switched up and took over care of our pet. So, of course, you need to consider any childcare, any pet care, and whether or not there's wiggle room there. If you have to wind up staying longer or coming home sooner than expected, are you able to, is that the person who is helping you able to make those adjustments as well? When you come, you're going to need to have some spending money in Indian rupees. And my husband and I hit a snag. We bank at 2 separate banks, but neither of our banks carried Indian rupees. From my research, I learned that the Indian rupee is a closed currency, so I think that means maybe you can only get it here, although maybe with other countries or other banks you're able to get the currency. All I know is that I was very surprised, but when I went to my bank, and they were not able to get rupees, so I wasn't able to have spending money here. Luckily, my doctor helped me with that. I can't say enough about how helpful that man is. But typically, you should have some sort of spending money, Indian rupees, before you come, because you might need to catch a cab or an Uber to get back to your hotel or wherever you're staying. And of course, you can't pay them in your home currency. So certainly look into that, and I would say that should be something that you look into sooner rather than later, because perhaps your bank is not able to get that currency, or if they are, it might take them a while to be able to get that in. 2 things I made sure to pack before I hopped on the plane was an eye mask to help me go to sleep. I'm sensitive to light when it's time to go to bed. And earplugs, and I'd recommend anybody make sure to bring those as well. They might sound like kind of no-brainers or frivolous things, but if you forget those things and you're therefore having a really hard time getting to sleep, it could make your journey here more uncomfortable than necessary. A power adapter is something to consider. In India, the power plugs look like this. And of course, in North America, the power plugs look like this. So we actually did our homework. We knew about that. We got a power adapter, and I think we just went to Walmart or something. We got a power adapter, and we came to find out that we actually didn't need it because the hotel that we're staying at already has a built-in power adapters, and I'll insert a picture of what that looks like. So I would recommend that that be one of the questions that you have for the people who you're in contact with to discuss your accommodations. Do they have power adapters in the hotel, in the apartment? If so, then I don't think you would need a power adapter. If not, then you might want to consider one. But also, another thing to consider is if you don't have a power adapter on your journey here or on your journey back home, what if your phone dies? Are you going to be okay with that? What if your laptop dies? Are you going to be okay with that? Because our phones did die on the way here. It was quite a long journey, and we were watching videos and playing games just to pass the time. And once our devices needed to be powered up again, we needed to use our power adapter at the airport. They didn't have just the built-in ones, so I would recommend that anybody get a power adapter. But with that being said, if you feel like you can do without your technology on the journey here or back, and your accommodations do have an adapter, then maybe you want to save on that expense. I recommend a SIM card for India as well as a data package. If you're going to get an Indian SIM card, make sure that your phone is unlocked by the provider so that you're able to switch out your SIM cards and that it works. I would recommend, if you're going to get a SIM card too, that you talk to a local so that they can go and get you the SIM card and bring it back. And likely you can use your regular SIM card from your home country, but beware of roaming fees. You might want to talk to your provider about that before coming over, because you don't want to come over and use just your regular data from home and come to find out that you're so far away from home, it's not going to be covered under your regular package and you're getting charged special fees. You may also want to consider having a charge card that does not charge international fees, or an ATM card that does not charge international fees, so that if you're here and you want to buy something but put it on a Visa or a MasterCard, that you can without being dinged extra fees. Or if you find that you need to take money out of an ATM machine, that you're not being charged extra fees. Travel insurance is also important, so you might want to consider that as well. Some people travel and they would like travel insurance, some people wouldn't. Some people would like medical insurance, some people wouldn't. I already have extended medical coverage at work, and that does also provide me with travel medical insurance. So it's up to your comfort level, but I would recommend that you at least look into that as well and give it a good consideration. You may also want to consider bringing antibiotics. We did before we came. We went to my family doctor and got some antibiotics. I found that I didn't need them, so that's something to consider as well. Maybe you want to bring them, maybe you don't. You might wind up needing them, you might not. You might want to consider at least taking something with you for the journey over, because the journey over to get Kshar Sutra can be a bit uncomfortable. You're having all of the same issues that you did back home, and the flight, at least for the one that we chose over here, I think it was over 30 hours. So that's a long time, and you might want to consider taking, of course, take your go bag if you have one, take your travel wipes to help clean up when if you have to have a bowel movement. And I would recommend taking painkillers at least for the flight over, so that you can try to make that part of the journey as comfortable as possible. You should make sure to bring a healthy supply of pads or cotton if you have a fistula that is draining anything, and most fistulas, I think, probably do drain. So before we came, I had these wonderful incognito pads, and I think they're amazing because they're not pads, they're panty liners, and they're panty liners with wings. Sure to bring plenty of pads or panty liners, something to catch the drainage. My doctor said that cotton balls are good to bring as well, and they're extremely comfortable, great at catching drainage, and extremely comfortable to wear, and you can actually unroll these. A lot of people don't know you can actually unroll cotton balls. So that is something to consider bringing over. You're going to buy cotton balls here. My doctor gave me a prescription for cotton. It turned out to be like just this big, huge cotton roll. And it was actually, comparatively speaking, quite cheap. So it's just like this giant cotton roll. And if you come to India and you find, hey, I've run out of pads, I've run out of cotton, you can actually buy these cottons in these giant rolls, at least in Pune, we found them. But otherwise, if you find that you run out of panty liners or pads or something to catch the drainage, never fear. There are plenty of stores that sell cotton. You might also want to consider staying at a place that has a hairdryer or if it doesn't, bring your own hair dryer so that you can make sure to dry the area off. When you have a fistula, especially if you're having surgery in that area, well, at least for me, I didn't want to be rubbing the area with paper towel or toilet paper or a towel or anything to dry off because it's already so tender. And with my doctor, he recommended I don't use any toilet paper in that area anyway, that if you use toilet paper, it could stick to the thread. And just little creature comforts, like maybe you want to contact your hotel if you're staying in one, and maybe you want to ask them if they would provide you with a microwave. Our hotel very graciously did. Maybe you would like to have a tea kettle in your room. Our hotel had a TV, a flat screen TV, and we brought a HDMI cable so that we could access Netflix from our computer. We brought our computer with us, our laptop, and we just plugged the HDMI cable into the laptop and into the TV, and we were able to watch TV shows because, at least from what I looked at on TV over here, there's very few English speaking shows, so it went a long way to be able to watch movies. We brought some movies or Netflix. To make myself comfortable, I would want my regular herbal supplements. I take turmeric to help with a healthy immune system. I drink chaga tea that helps with digestion and with a healthy immune system. And I make sure to take probiotics. And it was important to me that I continue to take my probiotics because I knew that coming to a different country, there would be different bacteria in the food, in the water. Not bad bacteria, but it's just different. And I didn't really want my, they call it gut flora. I didn't want that completely interrupted for this trip and have to go through that transition. And so my gut flora still had at least some or a lot of the same bacteria it was used to. But they do sell, at least in my local Walmart, they sell travel probiotics because the ones that I use at home, they have to be refrigerated. And so I went to Walmart looking for probiotics that I could travel with, and they were there. You are available. You can get travel probiotics if that's something that you think would benefit you. And I think that it helped make my trip more comfortable because my bowel habits really pretty much stayed the same. As a woman, in my opinion, you tend to need a few more toiletries than a man on average. Oh, I should say, on the off chance that there is a lady watching my videos, that I don't think that they sell tampons here. At least not in the stores that I saw. So if you are a tampon wearer, you might want to consider taking a supply of those with you as well. They do sell pads for your menstrual cycle, so you wouldn't be without, but you might not be able to get tampons. Google Translation has been a lifesaver for us, and it's for two reasons, I think. One is our North American accent is sometimes difficult for people here to understand, and sometimes their Indian accent is difficult for us to understand, even though we're all speaking English. So it was helpful to type that out, the words, and they could see that. But also, we downloaded a Google Translation app, and that translated things into the local language here, as well as Hindi or multiple other languages. So if we were ever out and somebody was not able to understand us and we needed help, we could whip out our Google Translation app and type in what we needed to type in. I found often that people might not understand us, and then we type in whatever we needed to type in, and they were able to help us out in English. And of course, it was varying degrees of proficiency. But make sure whenever you're traveling somewhere and it's not an English-speaking country that you take your Google Translation app. Or any other translation app. I don't just want to pump Google, but that was the easiest one we found. It was great, but just any translation app. I'm not sure how other translation apps work, but with Google Translate, we downloaded the local language. And so when we were out and about in Pune, and if we needed help, we could just use that and not have to worry about being online. So whatever app you choose to go with, you might want to consider that as well. Does it need internet access in order to work? And if so, do you have mobile data? Are you willing to use it for that or not? I recommend to anybody that you choose a place that has good access to the internet. I would say that you need internet access as a way to communicate with people back home, but also as a way to pay your bills. Because if you're coming to India for Kshar Sutra, it's going to be most likely for a decent length of time. So you would need, or at least I did, need to pay a way to pay your bills back home. And if you're doing online banking, of course, that would be the way to do it. I would recommend that you download two really great apps that we discovered here. One is Uber, in order to get a good, reputable taxi service, and another is called OLA. If you're going to download OLA, I think you might need an Indian SIM card or an Indian phone number. So that's something to consider as well. When I downloaded Uber and OLA and then tried to use those apps for the first time, they asked for a phone number for India. I think with Uber, you can just kind of have that set up in your home country and not worry about having an Indian phone number. And perhaps with OLA, you do need an Indian phone number. This is up to your comfort level as well. And some people will be comfortable, some people will not. I'm not giving a recommendation either way, but you might want to consider taking sleeping pills for the first little while that you're here. Maybe you want to bring some over from home or not if you're not comfortable. It's a personal decision. When we came here, the jet lag was absolutely horrific. And I learned that on average it takes about 1 day for every hour of time zone that you cross before your body gets acclimated to the local time. And there was an 8.5-hour time zone difference before we got here. So when we first got here, we wanted to sleep, and then we weren't able to sleep, and we were sleeping at odd hours. We were hungry, but then we couldn't eat. It just felt like our body needed to do everything and nothing at the same time. It was such a weird sensation. I really can't describe it. So I did take a few sleeping pills that I just got from a pharmacy back home for a day or two while we were here, just to try to help me stay asleep, because I knew I needed rest, but for whatever reason I wasn't able to stay asleep. I really can't describe it. It's just the jet lag really did a number on our bodies, and those things helped me. One thing I wish that I had brought from home was thank you cards. I did not realize that I'd even want to write out thank you cards, but people here in Pune, especially hotel staff, I mean, everybody that we interacted with were just so helpful, and I felt so grateful for their help. They were recommending places for us to visit, or places for us that would be good for us to walk around and explore the city, or one staff member got us an Indian SIM card for our phone. They went above and beyond to help us answer our cultural questions. The people in the restaurant that we usually frequent in our hotel, they went above and beyond to help me figure out how to eat some of the traditional Indian dishes. I got giggled at, but that's okay. It was really funny. So I just felt so very grateful for the help that I received, and I didn't have any thank you cards to give anybody. So that might be, of course, it's not something you need, but it might be something that you want to consider as well. If you're here and you're getting help from this person and that person, and after a while you come to see certain people on a regular basis, at least we did in our hotel, and it was kind of difficult for us to find thank you cards, or we wanted to get a birthday card for one staff member. We couldn't find anything. I'm sure that they're around, but we don't know where anything is. At home, I have all kinds of just blank cards to be ready and willing to be filled out, and I wish I had brought some here, because it would have been nice just to have them available to fill out as needed. Before we came, we chose to have vaccines. I think we had typhoid and malaria. We had made sure that our measles, mumps, rubella was up to date. We had another vaccine that I can't quite remember. And this is a personal decision, and travel vaccines are not cheap by any means. At least they weren't for me. You might want to consider making sure that your vaccines are up to date, or taking some travel vaccines as well, because you certainly don't want to come to, a different country and you get sick with something that maybe you could have prevented by taking a travel vaccine. I would definitely recommend that you be cautious about drinking bottled water, about what fluids you drink, where you drink them, if it's a street vendor or not. I personally wouldn't recommend that you eat from a street vendor, but if you do, that is your choice. This is just my opinion, and I'm not an expert by any means, and I'm not a medical professional. But you might want to consider being cautious of where you eat and street vendors, and making sure that if you do have a fruit or a vegetable and you do choose to eat it, that maybe you want to consider peeling the skin off or washing it, just so that you aren't ingesting contaminated food or contaminated water, which could make you sick. on top of having to go through your medical procedures. I think that the journey is easier if you have a loved one, a partner, or a travel buddy to come with. So I know that there's a lot of people who just don't have the option of taking somebody that they know or care about with them. But I would recommend that if you can take a travel companion with you, that you do, just to help with the loneliness, the feelings of possible isolation, safety, just to have somebody to, just to have somebody to offer you support and comfort and friendship. Because when you're going through any sort of medical procedure, I think that it's kind of a time where you can feel very, very vulnerable. And it's just very important to have people, if you're able to have somebody there with you who can help you along.